In the quiet town of Astoria, Oregon, where the Pacific Ocean whispered secrets to the rocky shores, Alice Green carried the weight of a life shaped by loss and resilience. At 55, her silver-streaked hair and steady gaze told a story of a woman who had weathered storms. 20 years ago, she lost her husband, Tom, in a car accident, leaving her to raise their son, Jake, alone. Those years were a blur of late-night shifts at the local diner, school meetings, and quiet prayers for strength. But when Jake, now 32, welcomed his daughter, Clara, into the world, Alice felt a spark of joy she hadn't known since Tom's laughter filled their home. Clara, a 4-year-old with wide hazel eyes and a giggle that could melt the coldest heart, was Alice's sunbeam. Jake and his wife, Lisa, lived an hour away in Portland, in a sleek, modern house that felt more like a showroom than a home. Lisa, a sharp-edged marketing executive, always seemed distracted, her smiles as fleeting as a winter sun. Jake, once Alice's sensitive boy, had grown distant, his warmth buried under the pressures of his tech job and Lisa's ambitions. Still, Alice visited as often as she could, bringing homemade blueberry muffins and stuffed animals for Clara, determined to be the grandmother she'd always dreamed of. But something was wrong. Each visit revealed cracks in the perfect facade of Jake and Lisa's life. Clara's clothes were often too small, her shoes scuffed and worn. Once, Alice found her hungrily devouring a granola bar from Alice's purse, as if she hadn't eaten all day. The house, though spotless, felt sterile. No toys scattered on the floor, no drawings taped to the fridge. When Clara cried, Lisa would snap, "She's fine, let her be," while Jake stared at his phone, avoiding Alice's concerned glances. "Jake, is everything okay with Clara?" Alice asked one afternoon, her voice soft but firm as she watched Clara play with a frayed teddy bear. They were in the kitchen, the hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. Jake's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to Lisa, who was slicing apples with precise, angry cuts. "Mom, don't start," he said, his tone clipped. "We're doing our best. Kids are tough, okay?" Lisa set the knife down, her smile thin. "Alice, we appreciate your concern, but we've got this. Parenting's different now. You raised Jake in the 90s, things have changed." Alice bit her tongue, nodding, but her heart sank. She remembered Jake's childhood, messy, loud, full of love despite their struggles. Clara's world felt like a shadow of that. Still, she didn't want to push too hard. "I just want to help," she said, forcing a smile. "Maybe I could take Clara for a weekend? Give you two a break." Lisa's eyes narrowed, and Jake shifted uncomfortably. "We'll think about it," he muttered, but the conversation died there. Alice left that day with a knot in her stomach, replaying Clara's hungry gaze and Lisa's cold dismissal. Weeks turned into months, and Alice's visits grew less frequent, not by her choice. Jake started canceling plans, claiming work was hectic or Clara was under the weather. When Alice offered to bring soup or check on her, Lisa's texts were curt. "No need, we're handling it." Alice's calls went unanswered, her voicemails ignored. She tried to convince herself it was just the chaos of young parenthood, but the silence gnawed at her. Then, one rainy October evening, her phone buzzed. Jake's name lit up the screen, and Alice's heart leaped, hoping for good news. But his voice was flat, hollow. "Mom, it's Clara. She's gone." Alice's breath caught, the room spinning. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "She got sick. Really sick. The doctors couldn't do anything. She passed last night." His words were mechanical, like he was reading a script. Alice pressed for details. What was wrong? "Why didn't you tell me?" "Can I see her?" But Jake cut her off. "We're arranging the funeral. I'll let you know when to come." The call ended, and Alice sank to her kitchen floor, the phone slipping from her hand. Clara, her bright, curious Clara, was gone? At 4 years old? It didn't make sense. She hadn't seen her in weeks, hadn't been allowed to hold her, to comfort her. Grief crashed over her, but beneath it, a flicker of doubt burned. Jake's voice hadn't trembled. He hadn't cried. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The next day, Alice drove to Portland, the coastal mist clinging to her windshield like a shroud. Jake and Lisa's house loomed ahead, its windows dark despite the midday hour. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of lilies, and a small white coffin sat in the living room, surrounded by flowers. Alice's knees buckled at the sight. She reached for the coffin, desperate to see Clara's face one last time, to say goodbye. "Don't, Mom," Jake said sharply, appearing from the hallway. His eyes were red, but his posture was rigid, defensive. "Her body, it's not how you'd want to remember her." The illness was rough. Lisa stood behind him, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. "We're keeping it closed," she added, her voice devoid of warmth. "It's better this way." Alice's hand hovered over the coffin, trembling. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but their stares pinned her in place. "When's the funeral?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Tomorrow," Jake said. "Just us. We want it private." Alice nodded, her mind racing. No friends, no family, no announcement. It felt wrong, like a secret being buried. As she drove back to Astoria, the doubt in her gut hardened into resolve. She wouldn't let Clara go without answers. Not yet. That night, alone in her small seaside cottage, Alice sat at her kitchen table, staring at a photo of Clara laughing in her garden. The grief was unbearable, but so was the nagging question. Why had Jake and Lisa kept her away? Why did their story feel so hollow? She clutched the photo, whispering, "I'll find out what happened, sweetheart. I promise." Tomorrow, at the funeral, she'd look for the truth, no matter what it cost her. The morning of Clara's funeral dawned gray and heavy, the Oregon sky cloaked in a mist that seemed to seep into Alice Green's bones. She drove the winding road from Astoria to Portland, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her mind a storm of grief and suspicion. Clara, her 4-year-old granddaughter, was gone, or so Jake and Lisa claimed. But their cold detachment, the rushed funeral plans, and the forbidden coffin gnawed at Alice. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden, something sinister. Jake and Lisa's Portland house stood stark against the drizzle, its modern angles and glass windows reflecting the gloom. Inside, the living room was a shrine to loss. White lilies framed the small white coffin, their scent cloying. Alice's heart ached at the sight, but her eyes scanned the room. No mourners, no photos of Clara, no trace of the vibrant girl who loved to chase butterflies in Alice's garden. Just Jake, pacing near the kitchen, and Lisa, sitting stiffly on the couch, her phone in hand. Their newborn son, Lucas, was with Lisa's mother, they said, to keep things simple. "Mom, you're early," Jake said, his voice tight. His eyes darted to the coffin, then back to Alice. "We're just keeping it small. Family only." Alice nodded, her throat dry. "I understand," she said, though she didn't. Where were Clara's daycare teachers, her playdate friends, the neighbors who'd seen her toddling in the yard? She stepped toward the coffin, her fingers brushing the smooth wood. "Can I at least say goodbye?" Lisa's head snapped up. "No, Alice. We told you it's closed." Her body, "It's not right to see." Her tone was sharp, almost panicked, and Alice caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear? Guilt? "I just want to see her," Alice pressed, her voice trembling but firm. "She's my granddaughter." Jake moved between her and the coffin, his jaw set. "Mom, don't make this harder. Please." His hand rested on her shoulder, guiding her away, but his touch felt more like a warning than comfort. Alice relented, stepping back, but her mind raced. Why were they so desperate to keep the coffin closed? What were they hiding? She sat on the couch, pretending to compose herself, while watching Jake and Lisa from the corner of her eye. Jake's phone buzzed, and he stepped outside to answer it, his voice low and urgent. Lisa scrolled through her phone, her fingers twitching nervously. The room felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode. Then it happened. A faint sound, barely audible over the hum of the rain, a muffled whimper. Alice froze, her breath catching. It came again, softer, like a child's voice. "Help." Bammy, her nickname, the one Clara used for her. The sound was coming from the coffin. Alice's heart pounded, her palms sweating. She glanced at Lisa, who was engrossed in her phone, oblivious. Was she imagining it? Grief playing tricks? But the sound came again, clearer now. "Bammy, please." It was Clara's voice, weak but unmistakable. Every instinct screamed to act. Alice stood, her legs trembling, and approached the coffin. Her hands hovered over the lid, fear and hope warring within her. What if Clara was alive? The thought was impossible, insane, but she couldn't ignore it. She glanced back. Lisa was still distracted. This was her chance. With a shaky breath, Alice lifted the lid, the hinges creaking softly. The sight inside stole her breath. Clara lay there, her tiny body curled up, her wrists and ankles bound with thin ropes. A strip of cloth gag hung loosely around her mouth, slipped just enough for her to speak. Her hazel eyes, wide with terror, met Alice's. "Bammy." she whispered, tears streaking her pale cheeks. She was alive. Oh, sweetheart. Alice choked, tears spilling as she knelt beside the coffin. Her fingers fumbled with the ropes, untying them as gently as she could. Clara's skin was cold, her body trembling, but she was breathing, her pulse faint but steady. Alice's mind reeled. How could this be? Jake and Lisa said she was dead. They'd planned a funeral. This wasn't neglect. This was something monstrous. Footsteps snapped Alice back to reality. Lisa was standing, her phone forgotten, her face pale. Alice, what are you doing? She hissed, striding toward the coffin. Thinking fast, Alice scooped Clara into her arms, the girl's small frame light as a feather. Stay quiet, sweetheart, she whispered, ducking behind a heavy curtain near the window. Clara clung to her, silent but shaking. Alice's heart thundered as Lisa reached the coffin, her gasp echoing in the room. Jake. Lisa screamed, her voice shrill. She's gone. Jake burst back inside, his phone still in hand. What do you mean, gone? He rushed to the coffin, staring into its empty interior. This can't. How did she? Alice's mind raced. They knew Clara was alive. They'd tied her up, locked her in there, and told the world she was dead. Why? Her anger surged, but she forced herself to stay calm. She needed to get Clara out, to safety, before they realized she was still in the house. Holding Clara close, Alice slipped through a side door into the hallway, her movements silent. She reached the guest room, locking the door behind her. Clara whimpered, and Alice knelt, stroking her hair. You're safe now, baby. I've got you. Can you tell me what happened? Clara's voice was small, broken. Mommy and Daddy said I was bad. They put me in the box. Said I had to stay quiet cause they only want the baby brother. Her words hit Alice like a punch, confirming her worst fears. Jake and Lisa didn't just neglect Clara, they wanted her gone. Alice's phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. It was a text from her friend Mary, a social worker who'd promised to be on standby after Alice shared her suspicions last night at the coffee shop nearby. Call if you need me. Alice's fingers flew over the screen, typing, emergency. Come to Jake's house. Bring help. Clara's alive. She hit send, then turned to Clara, forcing a calm she didn't feel. We're going to get out of here, okay? But we have to be brave. Clara nodded, her trust in Alice absolute. Alice's resolve hardened. She'd protect Clara, no matter what it took. A loud knock echoed through the house. Mary, or maybe the police she'd called. Jake's voice boomed from the living room. Who's that? Lisa, check the door. Alice clutched Clara, her pulse racing. The truth was out, but the danger was far from over. She had to keep Clara safe and expose Jake and Lisa's unthinkable crime before they could cover their tracks. The air in Jake and Lisa's Portland home was thick with tension, the rain outside a relentless drumbeat against the windows. Alice Green crouched in the guest room, her 4-year-old granddaughter Clara trembling in her arms. Moments ago, she discovered Clara alive, bound and gagged in a coffin meant to seal her fate. The truth was a knife in Alice's heart. Her son Jake and his wife Lisa had faked Clara's death, discarding her like an unwanted toy to focus on their newborn son, Lucas. Now, with a knock echoing through the house, Alice's plan to expose their crime teetered on the edge of chaos. Clara's small hand clutched Alice's sweater, her hazel eyes wide with fear. Mammy, are they going to find us? She whispered, her voice barely audible. No, sweetheart, Alice murmured, stroking Clara's hair. We're safe here. Help is coming. But her pulse raced. She texted her friend Mary, a social worker, to bring help, but every second felt like a lifetime. Jake's voice boomed from the living room, sharp with panic. Lisa, who's at the door? Check it. Lisa's heels clicked across the hardwood, her tone clipped. It's probably just a neighbor. Stay calm. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Alice knew they were scrambling, realizing Clara was gone from the coffin. She tightened her grip on Clara, her mind racing for the next move. Her phone vibrated softly, Mary's reply. Here with a colleague. Police on the way. Stay hidden. Relief flooded Alice, but it was tempered by dread. She needed evidence, something undeniable to ensure Jake and Lisa face justice. Clara's words, about being locked in the box because her parents only wanted her brother, were damning, but a child's testimony might not be enough. Alice's eyes darted around the guest room, landing on a small desk in the corner. Lisa was meticulous, always jotting notes. Maybe there was something here, a clue to their plan. Clara, stay right here, Alice whispered, easing the girl onto the bed and tucking a blanket around her. I'm just checking something. Don't move, okay. Clara nodded, clutching the blanket like a shield. Alice crept to the desk, her hands shaking as she opened the drawer. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with Lisa's precise handwriting. She flipped through it, her heart pounding, and froze. A page dated 2 weeks ago read, "Clara's illness is working. Jake says we tell Mom she's terminal. After the funeral, we claim the insurance. Lucas gets everything." Alice's blood ran cold. This was it, proof of their scheme. They'd starved Clara, isolated her, and planned to profit from her staged death. She slipped the notebook into her jacket, her resolve hardening. But voices in the hallway snapped her back to the present. Jake was close, his footsteps heavy. "Check every room, Lisa. She can't have gone far." Alice darted back to Clara, lifting her gently and slipping behind the heavy curtains. The door creaked open, and Jake's shadow loomed across the room. "Nothing here," he muttered, but his voice was strained, like a man unraveling. As he left, Alice exhaled, her mind racing. The police were coming, but she needed to keep Jake and Lisa distracted until they arrived. A plan formed. She'd confront them, not with violence, but with the truth. She whispered to Clara, "I'm going to talk to your parents. Mary's outside, and she'll take care of you. Be brave for me." Clara's lip quivered, but she nodded. Alice texted Mary, "Meet me at the back door. Take Clara." Then, with a deep breath, she carried Clara to the back entrance, where Mary waited, her face pale but determined. "Alice, what's happening?" Mary hissed, taking Clara into her arms. The girl clung to her, and Alice's heart broke at the sight. "They tried to kill her," Alice said, her voice low. "I have proof. Keep her safe. The police are coming, right?" "They're 5 minutes out," Mary confirmed, her eyes wide. "Be careful." Alice nodded, slipping back inside. She straightened her shoulders, channeling every ounce of strength from her years of surviving loss. She walked into the living room, where Jake and Lisa stood by the empty coffin, their faces a mix of fear and fury. "Looking for something?" Alice asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Jake spun around, his eyes narrowing. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" he snapped. "Where's Clara?" Lisa stepped forward, her voice icy. "You opened the coffin, didn't you? After we told you not to." Alice held their gaze, her hand brushing the notebook in her jacket. "I did. And I found Clara, alive, tied up, terrified. How could you do this to your own daughter?" Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I know everything. The fake illness, the insurance scam, the way you starved her because you wanted a son." Jake's face paled, but Lisa laughed, a brittle sound. "You're delusional, Alice. Clara was sick. We were grieving. You're just confused." "Then explain this," Alice said, pulling out the notebook and holding it up. "Your plans, Lisa, written in your own hand. You thought you could erase Clara and get away with it." Lisa lunged for the notebook, but Alice stepped back, her eyes blazing. "Don't. The police are on their way. They'll see this, and they'll hear Clara's story." Jake's bravado crumbled. "Mom, listen, we didn't mean. It was a mistake. We love Clara." His voice was desperate, but Alice saw through the lie. She'd raised him, known his heart once, but this man was a stranger. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. Lisa's eyes widened, and she grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go, now." "You're not going anywhere," Alice said, stepping between them and the door. "You'll face what you've done." The front door burst open, and 2 officers stormed in, followed by Mary, who held Clara's hand. Clara's small voice cut through the chaos. "Mommy, Daddy, why did you put me in the box?" The words were a dagger, and Jake and Lisa froze, their faces ashen. "Ma'am, step back," an officer said to Alice, his hand on his radio. "We've got it from here." Alice nodded, her legs weak as the adrenaline ebbed. She watched as the officers questioned Jake and Lisa, their excuses unraveling. Mary guided Clara to Alice, and she knelt, pulling her granddaughter into a fierce hug. "You're safe now," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. As the officers cuffed Jake and Lisa, Alice handed over the notebook, her voice steady. "This is their plan. Everything they did to Clara." The room spun with the weight of her victory, but the fight wasn't over. She'd saved Clara, but now she had to ensure justice and protect her granddaughter's future. The Portland police station was a blur of fluorescent lights and hushed voices as Alice Green sat in a stark interview room, her hands clasped tightly around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. Clara, her 4-year-old granddaughter, was safe, tucked away with Mary at a nearby shelter, but the weight of the day pressed heavily on Alice's shoulders. Just hours ago, she'd uncovered Jake and Lisa's horrific plan to fake Clara's death, Finding her bound in a coffin meant to bury their crime. The notebook, Lisa's damning record of their scheme, now lay in evidence bags, but Alice knew the battle for justice was only beginning. An officer, Detective Ramirez, sat across from her, his expression a mix of empathy and resolve. "Mrs. Green, you've given us a lot to work with: the notebook, Clara's statement, the medical report. But I need you to walk me through it again. Every detail." Alice nodded, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. She recounted the past months, Clara's hunger, the ill-fitting clothes, Jake and Lisa's growing distance. She described the chilling moment she heard Clara's voice from the coffin, the ropes cutting into her tiny wrists, and the notebook's cold calculation of insurance fraud and neglect. "They wanted her gone," Alice said, her voice breaking, "because she wasn't the son they wanted." Ramirez scribbled notes, his jaw tight. "We've got Clara's medical exam results. Malnutrition, bruising, signs of restraint. It's enough to hold them, but we're digging deeper. Any idea why they go this far?" Alice shook her head, tears welling. "Jake was my boy. I raised him alone after his dad died. I thought I knew him. But it's like he's someone else." The betrayal cut deeper than the crime itself. Her son, her flesh and blood, had become a stranger capable of such cruelty. Outside, the media was gathering, drawn by the sensational story of a child resurrected from a coffin. Alice glimpsed a news van through the station window, its headline flashing, "Portland couple arrested in shocking child abuse case." She turned away, sickened. Clara didn't need to be a headline. She needed a future. Mary joined her after the interview, her face etched with worry. "Clara's okay, Alice. She's drawing pictures, asking for you. The social worker says she's resilient, but she's been through hell." Alice's heart clenched. "I need to see her. And Lucas, their newborn. He's innocent in this. I won't let him grow up in that house." Mary nodded. "Child Protective Services is involved. They're placing both kids in temporary care until the court decides. You're listed as a potential guardian, but it'll be a process." The thought of Clara and Lucas in foster care spurred Alice into action. She'd lost Jake to whatever darkness had consumed him, but she wouldn't lose her grandchildren. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice firm. "They're my family." That night, Alice visited Clara at the shelter, a cozy facility with colorful walls and soft lighting. Clara ran to her, arms outstretched. "Mammy," she cried, burying her face in Alice's neck. Alice held her tightly, tears streaming as she whispered, "I'm here, sweetheart. I'll always be here." Clara's small voice trembled. "Are Mommy and Daddy mad at me?" "No, baby," Alice said, stroking her hair. "They made bad choices, but that's not your fault. You're safe now." She didn't know how to explain the truth to a 4-year-old, but she vowed Clara would never feel unloved again. Over the next week, Alice threw herself into the legal fight. She met with CPS caseworkers, hired a lawyer with her modest savings, and gathered character references from friends in Astoria. The notebook was a cornerstone of the case, its entries detailing how Jake and Lisa planned to isolate Clara, fake her illness, and claim insurance money after her death. Clara's medical records painted a grim picture: chronic undernourishment, bruises consistent with restraint, and emotional trauma. Alice also found text messages on Jake's old phone, which he left at the house, revealing their disdain for Clara. One from Lisa read, "She's a burden. Lucas is our fresh start." The preliminary hearing was a media circus, with reporters crowding the courthouse steps. Alice shielded her face, her focus on the courtroom. Jake and Lisa sat stone-faced, their lawyers arguing they'd been misunderstood. But when Clara's recorded statement played, her small voice describing the dark box and her parents' coldness, the room fell silent. Alice gripped Mary's hand, tears burning her eyes. The judge's voice was grave. "The defendants will remain in custody. Charges include child endangerment, fraud, and attempted manslaughter." Alice felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. She'd exposed their crime, but the cost was her son. Outside, a reporter shoved a microphone in her face. "Mrs. Green, how does it feel to turn in your own son?" Alice pushed past, her silence louder than any answer. Back in Astoria, Alice prepared for the next step, gaining custody. She cleaned her seaside cottage, turning the spare room into a haven for Clara and Lucas with bright quilts and stuffed animals. She met with a therapist to learn how to support Clara's healing, knowing the trauma would linger. Every night, she prayed for strength, her resolve a beacon in the darkness. At a CPS meeting, Alice presented her case, her voice unwavering. "Clara and Lucas deserve love, safety, a home. I've lost my son, but I won't lose them. I'll fight for them every day." The caseworker nodded, impressed by her determination. As Alice left, she received a call. The court had granted her temporary custody. She sank to her knees, sobbing with relief. The truth had prevailed, but the real work, rebuilding Clara's trust and raising 2 children, was just beginning. The sun dipped low over the Pacific, casting a golden glow across the cliffs of Astoria, Oregon, where Alice Green's seaside cottage stood as a haven of hope. A year had passed since she uncovered the horrific truth about her son Jake and his wife Lisa, who had faked their daughter Clara's death to erase her from their lives. Now, with temporary custody of 4-year-old Clara and her infant brother Lucas, Alice was rebuilding a family from the ashes of betrayal. The legal battle was won, but the deeper work, mending Clara's heart and forging a future, lay ahead. Alice's cottage hummed with new life. The once quiet rooms were filled with Clara's laughter as she colored at the kitchen table, her crayons scattering like confetti. Lucas, now a chubby 1-year-old, babbled in his high chair, his tiny hands grasping at Cheerios. Alice moved between them, stirring a pot of vegetable soup, her silver hair catching the evening light. The weight of the past year lingered in her eyes, but a quiet strength anchored her. She'd lost Jake, the boy she'd raised through grief and hardship, but she'd gained a purpose, to give her grandchildren the love their parents had denied them. Clara's healing was a delicate dance. The trauma of being bound and locked in a coffin left shadows in her dreams, but weekly therapy sessions with a kind child psychologist, Dr. Ellis, were helping. Clara's drawings, once dark scribbles, now bloomed with flowers and smiling suns. "Bammy, look," she chirped, holding up a picture of a house with 3 stick figures. "That's us, you, me, and Lucas." Alice's heart swelled. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, taping it to the fridge. But Clara's question later that evening pierced her. "Will Mommy and Daddy ever come back?" Alice knelt, choosing her words carefully. "They're far away, dealing with their mistakes. But you're with me now, and I'll keep you safe forever." Clara nodded, her trust in Alice a fragile, precious gift. The legal aftermath had been grueling but just. Jake and Lisa's trial, a media frenzy in Portland, ended with a 5-year sentence for child endangerment, fraud, and attempted manslaughter. The notebook Alice found, Lisa's chilling blueprint for Clara's disappearance, was key, its entries exposing their plan to starve Clara, fake her death, and claim insurance money for their perfect son, Lucas. Text messages and Clara's medical records, showing malnutrition and bruises, sealed their fate. The judge stripped them of parental rights, a decision that left Alice hollow. She mourned the son she'd known, but she couldn't forgive the man he'd become. The community rallied around Alice. Her Astoria neighbors, led by her friend Mary, organized a fundraiser to cover legal fees and therapy costs. Local businesses donated toys and clothes for Clara and Lucas, and the diner where Alice once worked sent weekly meals. But the attention wasn't all kind. News outlets hounded her, their headlines, "Grandmother Hero Saves Child from Coffin," turning her pain into a spectacle. Alice ignored the noise, focusing on her grandchildren. She didn't want to be a hero, she wanted to be their home. Alice's transformation was profound. Once defined by loss, her husband Tom's death, Jake's estrangement, she found new purpose in advocacy. She volunteered with a Portland nonprofit for child welfare, sharing her story at support groups to empower other families. No child should feel unwanted, she told a room of parents and social workers, her voice steady. "We have to listen to fight for them." Her words sparked a local campaign to train foster parents, and Alice's courage became a quiet legend in Oregon. Clara's resilience inspired Alice daily. The girl, once withdrawn, now ran through the cottage's garden, chasing butterflies as Alice had once watched her do. One afternoon, Clara tugged Alice's hand, pointing to the ocean. "Can we build a sandcastle, Bammy? A big one, for us." Alice laughed, grabbing a bucket. As they sculpted towers under the summer sky, Lucas giggled nearby, clapping at the waves. For the first time in years, Alice felt whole. Lucas, too, thrived. His first steps came on the cottage's creaky floors, his babbled "Bammy" a melody to Alice's ears. She documented every milestone, determined he'd know only love. But raising 2 children at 56 wasn't easy. Her savings dwindled, and sleepless nights tested her stamina. Mary, ever loyal, urged her to accept help. "You're not alone, Alice," she said, dropping off groceries. "We're your family, too." Alice smiled, grateful for the village that held her up. The final court hearing, months ago, had cemented her victory. Standing before the judge, Alice pleaded for permanent custody. "Clara and Lucas are my heart," she said, her voice unwavering. I'll give them everything I have: love, stability, a future. The judge, moved by her resolve and the evidence of her care, granted her request. Alice wept as she signed the papers, Clara's small hand in hers. It was official. They were a family. Now, as the sun set over Astoria, Alice sat on the porch with Clara and Lucas, the ocean's rhythm a soothing backdrop. Clara leaned against her, whispering, "I love you, Bammy." Lucas snuggled in her lap, his eyes heavy. Alice kissed their heads, her heart full. She'd faced the darkest betrayal, but she'd emerged with light, two children who called her home, a community that lifted her, and a mission to protect others. As the stars emerged, Alice looked out at the horizon, a smile breaking through her tears. "We made it," she whispered to herself. She'd turned pain into purpose, loss into love. Clara's hand squeezed hers, and Alice knew this was her triumph, not over Jake and Lisa, but for the family she'd built. The future was theirs, and she'd fight for every moment of it.